To Crossing the Divide, the show that promotes and encourages common sense as we analyze and discuss current events and issues facing the town of Winchester. My name is Glenn Albanesius, and as always, I'm joined tonight by Mr. Ken Fracasso, former mayor and current selectman. Good evening, Ken.
Hey, Glenn.
Before we get started, I just wanted to bring up a couple current events that I think everyone either is aware of or needs to be aware of. We had a local election here in town and fared very well with a couple positions. Jay Case got elected pretty overwhelmingly, and we are very encouraged that finally Winsted will have a strong voice in Hartford. I'm sure you agree with that, Ken.
Absolutely.
And Clark Chapin from New Milford was also elected to the state senate. And again, I think that's an encouraging outcome for everybody in this neck of the woods. I got to know Clark pretty well throughout the campaign. He spent quite a bit of time up here in Winsted and the surrounding areas, and find him to be a very articulate gentleman. I think we'll be well served by him in the state senate. Secondly, Ken, I just want to read something real quick, again, as it blends pretty well with our message that we've been trying to convey over the past couple shows, and that relates to finances. And, we hear nationally about the fiscal cliff, and just a little bit of data that I downloaded and want to read here regarding the state situation. And the reason I want to do this is because some of the comments that we'll have here tonight will relate to how we've recognized the situation and how we want to try to fix things, or at least throw out some ideas on how to handle the situation.
On a local level.
On a local level,
right. Correct.
But we are going to be impacted, ladies and gentlemen, pretty significantly by the state situation. And
Absolutely.
I think that it unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that hear things and don't necessarily understand it. So I just want to start real quick and read a couple paragraphs here from an article by Keith Fano from the Connecticut Mirror. State analysts Thursday projected more than $1.1 billion state budget deficit in the fiscal year beginning July 1, a gap roughly one-third the size of the record-setting shortfall that Connecticut's governor and legislature tried to close just 2 years ago. The projected shortfall for the coming year is sandwiched between the $365 million deficit Governor Malloy's administration reported Wednesday for the current fiscal year and a long-range forecast for another gap of more than $1 billion in 2014 and 15. The governor and legislature must balance the current books and craft a new two-year spending plan this spring. That means they must wipe $2.5 billion in real and projected red ink off the state's books before the 2013 session ends next June. The governor has pledged not to raise taxes, Ken, and I think that given that pledge, we can take him at face value. I don't think he is going to be able to do it, but the only other way to close that gap is to cut spending.
Right.
And I think that that's directly going to impact the town of Winchester.
Right. Every town in the state.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
With the monies that we get, likely on both the the town side and the education side. I could be wrong, but
I think you're right on target. I think that both LoSup money, anything that we use for roads or improvements, as well as the education. I mean, I can foresee, ECS grants being cut severely, the MBR. I mean, there's going to have to be some changes. If they're not going to raise taxes, they have to make it up somehow.
Right.
And so I think, couple that with the reval that the town of Winchester is going through, and it's not the only town. I mean, there's several towns in the state that have already gone through, and several more that will be going through this process. The hurt's going to be on multiple fronts, unfortunately.
Right, I agree. And Jay ran a pretty strong message of fiscal responsibility. I was encouraged to hear it, and I know that the voters in town and the surrounding areas heard that message loud and clear. I had an opportunity to go door to door with Jay, and he stayed on message. And I certainly think that they are going to be in a minority, unfortunately, in the state. The Democrats clearly run the show over there. But this is all coming to a head, and I think, again, as we, talk to the viewers, over the past few shows and going forward, we are going to continue to try to show people that we do recognize the situation and hopefully have some ideas and some ways to manage what could be a real crisis.
Right. I think that given the northwest corner, Winston in particular, I think it is a fiscal conservative area. Romney did, even though he didn't win the national election, right. He was the top vote getter in the local, along with Linda.
Right.
So I think the people, particularly in Winston, get the fact that we're in a financial crisis here. Unfortunately, that didn't resonate to the national level.
Right.
But we are thankful that Jay and Clark did get in, and as you said, they are in the minority. They have an uphill battle ahead of them, but I think both of them will fare very well.
Right, and as we look for, solutions, I think, as I mentioned, just a second ago, I know that Jay and Clark will be up in town meeting with us, staying close to us. They've made that commitment, and I think that's going to be critical for the town. We're going to have some ideas and projects and hopefully some, ways to move forward, and I think the fact that we have two voices to represent us here in town, I think is a great thing.
Yeah.
So we are Republicans. We have a viewpoint. The government must be operated as efficiently and effectively on your behalf as possible. We need to keep an eye on how our tax dollars are spent. Ken and I are doing this show so that you can hear directly from us on the challenges Winston faces and discuss the solutions that communities must undertake to ensure a brighter future. Before we dive into the details of this program, we want to thank you for coming out to vote. As Ken and I said, we had good results, and that's going to be critical for moving us forward. Hartford needs to be restructured, and so does Winston.
Yeah, obviously. Just a quick review. The last two shows, we basically spoke on economic development. We believe that growth and development is key to the survival of the town of Winchester. Well, without real sustainable revitalization, especially of our downtown area, this is not going to be accomplished. We cannot simply continue to increase taxes to pay for our infrastructure improvements and needs. I believe the taxpayers, or the majority of them, understand this, and they expect that we as selectmen should as well understand that. It's not to say that we can't reverse this course that we had in front of us, but this is something that we can do, and we can have a bright future for the town of Winchester. The good news is that we can change this, but it needs to be concise and targeted at how we approach this issue. And as we've stated in previous shows, the way to do this is to reduce, restructure, and reinvest in ourselves. The voters have spoken clearly on reductions. It took several budget referendums to pass. I mean, it did finally pass at a 0. However, as you recall, Glenn and I were not in favor of this budget because even though it's a 0, it was the way we got to the 0, and it does nothing to get us going in the right direction, right, which is what we need to do. We are concerned that this current budget, we've missed several opportunities that could have put us in the right direction. The property reval, which we've talked about several times, will be out, I believe, within probably the next 2 to 3 weeks, and I think that as we've stated before, there's going to be some significant increases to the taxpayers of this town. Other comparable communities that have already gone through this process have seen their grand list shrink 10 to 20%, which is a huge number. And the redistribution of the values have gone away from the commercial properties and increased, the residentials. We have over 50% of our downtown commercial space that's vacant. And the local businesses that are here, remain here, struggle on a daily basis just to survive. And on top of that, we'll see a larger decline in the downtown neighborhoods, which is something that we've been campaigning and talking about for several weeks, if not months. And it's not just a problem for a few Highland Lake residents. This is everyone's problem. It's town-wide. Just to give an example, if you live near the Smith Hill area or the Wallens Hill area, and you've been fortunate enough that your home has, maintained its value, but if the total grand list decreases by 20%, you're going to see a 20% increase in your property taxes. Even if the budget stays at zero or is maybe reduced a quarter to a half mil. I mean, these are just facts, and it's sad, but it's something that's going to happen. And this is not a sustainable situation. This is exactly what we've been talking about. This is why we must come together, as an entire group, and plan and start acting, in the best interest of our, community.
Well stated, Ken. Moving forward, how do we restructure town services? We have to make sure that we create a flexible operating structure that we can afford. And the key word is flexibility and affordability. We need to understand that this has to happen both at Town Hall, Public Works, including water and sewer, and the school district as well. We're going to focus on the first three here, and we need your help. That goes without saying. Community support and understanding of the situation is the only way this thing is going to get resolved. And especially on the school side, again, Ken and I have taken pretty strong positions. We feel that it's based in reality and an understanding of what's going on and how we need to fix it. We do need your support, at meetings, amongst your circles and friends, and that's the way we can get these changes made. We can't simply continue to pay increases for showing up and providing benefits that the taxpayers ceased to have a long time ago. Ken and I are encouraged by the new team at Gilbert. I have a son currently in the school up there, and also my oldest substitutes on a fairly regular basis, and they have nothing but words of praise for both gentlemen. Ken, I know that Michael has come home and said the same thing. He's
Right.
excited about some of the things that are going up and at Gilbert, and you and I view Gilbert as a real genuine partner to the town in trying to make some advancements.
Absolutely. I mean, and they are implementing programs and approaches that make sense for the community. I mean, some of those include that they're, I would say it's probably a new commitment to improving the reading levels. I know that I believe it's about half of the 7th grade are presently reading below their standard level, and they've made a commitment to improve that, and I know that they will. I feel confident that they will. They've also implemented something that's called the Wall of Honor. It's a public recognition for achieving academic excellence. My son Michael told me about that just a few months ago. Mm-hmm. I believe next year they plan to have iPads for every student, and here again, the people at Gilbert, the ones that are in control, are embracing technology, not just buildings, brick and mortar. And they're improving, and they're going to have a much better partnership with the local community college. There'll be more AP classes available, and I think this is a huge step. I know that John Gauger has mentioned this on several occasions. I believe his daughter took several classes
Right.
at the community college.
And I just want to jump in quickly, Ken, and I had a side conversation with Steve Sedlak just a couple weeks ago, and in conversation we did bring up the relationship that Gilbert has had in the past with the college, but more recently, again, behind the the efforts of the new principal and superintendent, he said that they have really had recent discussions with the college, and he was just genuinely excited. I could see it in his voice, and they've made some real progress. He goes, in a couple months' time, he goes, they've been able to do things that haven't been able to happen for years.
Right.
And I know Steve fairly well, and I was thrilled. I mean, it was a positive comment, again, on the relationship between Gilbert and Northwestern, and I think that obviously we need more of that to happen. But we've got a couple of gentlemen in place that see that and have taken the initiative to make it happen.
That's a good thing. Obviously this new blood, as you just stated, has made, some rapid improvements in something that's I think is very important for the education of all the students in town. There's just one more note that I wanted to make as far as the what I perceive as positive things at the Gilbert is the better use of their staff to maximize student education. There was a time where there were several classes that they had 2 or 3 students per class, and that's been addressed and changed. So I think that there's a huge commitment on the Gilbert part, and I applaud them. I think that they've done an excellent job. And I've said that right along from the time that they moved 7th and 8th grade up there. I have not heard one negative comment. I know I say that over and over again, but I haven't.
Right. And the Gilbert partnership, as we've said and will continue to say, needs to be expanded on. They've committed to doing a professional job, and they've done this without asking for more dollars. I know that they have made some fairly significant concessions recently, but they seem to spend their money well. They seem to be oriented on results, and that's what this town needs more of. So I think that we need to encourage that as much as we can. And I will also share, just recently I had a conversation with a parent who came up and we spoke, not having talked to each other for quite a while, but the conversation pretty soon got to her telling me how excited she was for the 7th and 8th grade move. And I know that there was some hesitancy on a lot of people's part back when this was under discussion, once it finally got voted on. But this parent just, went on and on and on what a great thing it's turned out to be. Right. And I know that, that flies in the face, unfortunately, of, some of the majority on our board, that, consolidation, doesn't work. But
Right.
here was a clear case of a parent coming up and saying to me that it's been nothing but a great thing for her kids and everyone around her.
Now, was she a teacher at one time?
Yes, she was,
Okay.
yeah. And
All
I
right.
think she's backed off for, a couple different reasons. She has a job as well. But, I did say to her, and one of the concerns that, we want to make the community aware of is that there is a fairly strong faction on the Board of Ed that may want to undo this relationship as far as the 7th and 8th grade kids, trying to get them back into the system. I have heard that is subtly one of the reasons why they don't want to close a school, if they are able to bring those kids back into the K through 6 program and expand that back to the way it was. But I just think that the progress that we've made, Ken, over the past couple months in this program and last year, I think undoing that would be a real step back.
Well, I agree. I mean, I've said over and over again, and I said just a few minutes ago, I think that they've done an outstanding job at Gilbert School. But I mean, to have someone that's on the local Board of Ed that would even consider bringing this back, I mean, it kind of flies in the face of everything they said. I mean,
Right.
We've campaigned now for several years that there's excess space in these 3 buildings, yet they want to bring 200 plus students back. I mean, where are they going to put them, on a roof?
Right.
I mean, it's just they continue to talk out of both sides of their mouth. They'll say one thing when it suits them, and then they'll change their mind. So, well, all I can say is, I hope the parents will rally around this and, see what a good job Gilbert's done, and hopefully it'll stay just the way it is. If not, give the whole thing to Gilbert.
Right.
Maybe.
And that's the key, focus on education, because the point being was that there was a contract, a 3-year contract, correct, between the school system and Gilbert, and that contract is up for renegotiation. And it's at that point where, votes will be taken as to whether or not to undo the progress that we see and parents see has already happening. And again, there's a major push to focus on a new building, and as we've stated time and time again, we think the focus should be on education and spending those dollars as wisely as possible.
Right.
A new building, in our eyes, is unaffordable based on the town's current finances, and I think the impact to the taxpayers, if they were to approve a plan like that, would be devastating.
I agree. I just, here again, it's not, a new building isn't gonna make the children smarter. I mean, it's through the reasons or the road that Gilbert has chosen, with the iPads and, better teaching, that's what's gonna make this work. Building a new building isn't the answer to improving the grades.
Right. And Ken, as I hope everyone understands that, Ken and I are not against a new building, but we need to do a lot of work before we get financially to a position where we can afford it. And we're not there now, and there's a lot of groundwork and things that need to happen before we even discuss that. And whether it's a new building or renovation, I don't want to be viewed as someone that's just totally against a new building, forever and ever and ever, but we're just nowhere near that ever happening right now. Can we get there? Yes, if some of the things that we've talked about here happen. And then restructuring. The other thing we need to talk about is, some of the, we've got some details here as far as some of the ideas that other states and towns here in Connecticut have used to restructure their, their local governments. And a lot of the ideas are unique and they're different, and obviously we need to kind of look at some of these things and how we can implement them here in town. And Ken, I know you've got a couple.
Once again, I mean, it's going to be it's not just a Ken and Glenn show that's going to come up with these ideas. We're looking for the public to have their input, and I think that we need to be open to all kinds of ideas. Whether they sound crazy, they may not be crazy. When it's all said and done, it's kind of like is it a Bud Light commercial where they turn their bottles and the guy looks at it's like, what are you doing? Right. It's like and the end line is it's not crazy if it works.
Exactly.
So I think we've gotten to the point where we have to put all the cards on the table, look at every single thing that might help us. Just a couple examples. Detroit, they were faced with 70,000 abandoned buildings. 70,000, and they were eliminating entire city blocks. They turned them into open space. I mean, these are big city problems. But Baltimore and Boston, faced with neighborhoods that were in a free fall, put in place a major long-term incentives to convert multifamilies homes to single-family owner-occupied housing. And this is something that Marcia Sterling brought up 2 years ago. And we've tried to do something like this here in town through the same thing called a downtown revitalization program, turning these multifamily homes into single-family homes where the value would increase, the tax base would be greater, and this is a way to clean up the downtown, and then we would attract more businesses. New York City was faced with crumbling river wharfs in the early 1980s, and they've turned them into waterfront parks and a mixed use of different buildings. Battery Park City has now some of the best neighborhoods in that city. Portland, Maine, there was a derelict port with old warehouse and manufacturing space, has now become a vibrant retail and living space, and a founder of the farm to table restaurant movement. So, I mean, there are ways that we can turn this thing around. Some of these big city problems aren't what we face, but there are some similarities that we can learn from and follow.
Right, and then more close to home here in Connecticut, Portland, Connecticut, had I guess a number of abandoned quarries, and what they ended up doing is creating what they call Discovery Park. It's a water park, zip lines, hiking, an outdoor attraction for the entire region. Torrington, their downtown foot traffic had shrunk so that they now have created a weekly street fair. I think that it's a Thursday night event that the few times I've gone down to drive down Main Street and forgot it was there, very well attended, and a creative idea that seems to be working. New Hartford, they also, as we are, recognizing population shift and shrinking student count, they are now considering closing a school. They're doing the evaluations to make that decision. Colebrook and Norfolk, our neighbors to the north and west, They also are looking to consolidate their elementary schools. They have a shrinking population. They realize that the money that the taxpayers are paying to keep those two buildings are open is getting to be an issue. So they are, investigating how to make that problem go away.
It's the same. It's the same as us. If I get interrupt for just a second. The last two that you mentioned, New Hartford, and Colebrook and Norfolk. It's the same situation. Winston's not unique in this. The only part that is different is that I believe New Hartford as well as Colebrook and Norfolk will work in unison with each other. The Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, and they'll probably move stuff way ahead of Winston,
right,
because they're on the same page, and that's the difference. They work together. They for a common cause. They see what the problem is. They address it in the correct manner, and they actually do something about it instead of talking it to death,
right,
which is what we're famous for here.
Right, and that's where we need to, we need to make the change. Is to get to the implementation part of the, the equation, and clearly we've had this discussion for, as long as I've been involved locally in politics here, and as I've stated time and time again, sometimes you have to look to surrounding communities and people that have done this and are doing it, and I guess it's some sort of flattery to copy what they're doing, but if it gets it done, Ken, that's kind of what needs to happen. And
exactly.
That's
restructuring it. I mean, it's nothing more than a state of mind. I mean, it's approach that I know that I use in my daily life and running my business, and I'm sure you do at home too.
Right.
And families have to look at what they're spending money on, and what they're getting for that. What the results are.
Right.
This is nothing new. This is something that people generally use on a day-to-day basis. If it's not working, you have to make a change.
right, exactly.
And this is the mindset that people here in the town of Winchester need to embrace.
Exactly. And the restructuring that we've called for city services, I know that you and I have spoken, publicly in meetings, and we've asked, Dale in private meetings to start to do some analysis of the workforce, the job functions, what they do, how they do it. We've addressed, as a start, the supervisor's contract was a step in the right direction. But, as I stated earlier on in the show, we have this national fiscal cliff that everyone has seemed to to call it. We've got our state fiscal cliff that we've got looming ahead, and here in Winsted, I said to you just the other day, we've got a huge fiscal cliff, and I would even say that we've kind of jumped off that cliff, and backed up a couple steps and took a running start, because we've known about these issues for quite some time, and it's now time that we we start to implement some of the changes that we've talked about here, talked about in previous shows, instead of just talking about it.
I know it's getting close to time here, but once again, we spoke about a lot of things, and we tried to jam it into a half an hour here. But the fact that we've mentioned some of these other cities and towns that have done restructuring programs is something that has been a positive effect, and we need to follow suit, or we need to get going on our own plans if we have any intention of saving our town. It's going to be a joint effort. I mean, we all need to get in the same page and work together.
Right.
But it's something that can be accomplished.
Right. And again, as you'll hopefully see over the next couple months, I think there's going to be some serious discussions about next year's budget coming up.
Right.
That is on the agenda for Monday night's Board of Selectmen meeting. Again, we've thrown out that we'd like the town to take a look at civil service. There are some very important things that need to be discussed at our meetings, and we hope anyway that we're going to get to do that. Obviously, there's been a trend by the majority to kind of not do that, but hopefully over the next couple months, Ken and I will try to keep putting stuff on the agenda that needs to be addressed, because all this needs to happen sooner or later.
Right. And we will keep talking about these themes and others and working to make them happen. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
See you next week.